Deadpool and Wolverine is a great time at the movies. Reynolds and Jackman are electric together, the script is hilarious and heartfelt, and while the middle act definitely leans into the cameo fests that people like to complain about, it feels earned by the strong setup and payoff. But this video is not a review. Instead, I'll look at Hugh Jackman's highly anticipated return as Wolverine and how, in my opinion, the film successfully honoured the character's original ending in 2017's Logan. Strap in for meta jokes, time travel madness, and more in a slightly different video for my channel. Also, massive spoilers if you haven't seen the film. Seriously, go see it before you watch this. When Hugh Jackman announced he would join the cast of Deadpool 3, fans couldn't believe it. We knew Ryan Reynolds had been campaigning for a crossover movie for a while, and 7 years on from his supposed final appearance in Logan, everyone was so excited to see him return and in the MCU. But naturally, many were disappointed. Some inevitably saw this as a desperate move, bringing back the old favourites after the lukewarm reception to recent films. But mainly, I saw a fair few people disappointed that Hugh Jackman returned to the role after such an incredible send-off in Logan. Across 8 films, we basically saw his entire life story, from his origin in the 1840s to his final sacrifice in 2029. His story was complete, but now that was all ruined with a film that would lessen the impact of that final performance. But was it ruined? For me? Not at all. The filmmakers clearly knew how fans were feeling, addressing this very issue in the opening moments of the film. As soon as that music started up, I felt a sense of relief, knowing that Deadpool and Wolverine would be simultaneously tasteful and tasteless regarding Logan's ending. The facts don't change. The Wolverine we saw in that film is dead. We literally see his skeleton, and his sacrifice sent shivers down the timeline, causing the disintegration of Wade Wilson's universe. In one of the cleverest meta gags in the film, we learn that Jackman's Wolverine was an anchor being, an entity of such cosmic importance that when they die, their whole universe begins to collapse. Obviously, the real reason the timeline is dying is because the X-Men franchise, under 20th Century Fox, has officially ended in our world. After years of mocking the studio and his constant pleas to join the MCU, Deadpool finally gets the chance to be integrated into the Prime universe, but only by leaving his universe for dead. It's almost like the TVA share his fourth wall breaking abilities, literally watching Logan's death on repeat and berating the Merc with the Mouth for disrespecting the hero. Paradox, played by a hilariously camp Matthew McFadden, even calls the MCU the greatest timeline, and offers Deadpool the chance to escape the mediocrity of his universe. This is the genius of Hugh Jackman's return. Not only is he playing a different iteration of the character, complete with the classic costume, but the worst Wolverine in the multiverse. Paradox mirrors how some fans felt about the character's return, insulted and baffled by the idea that Deadpool believes he can just replace the iconic character with a lesser version. This Wolverine is constantly living in the shadow of the original, filled with regret and pain after he allowed his friends to die for the most tragically mundane reason. He must earn the respect of the characters and the audience, as he's constantly compared to the version that Jackman originated 20 years ago. By the end, his compassion to Cassandra Nova and his joining the fight for Deadpool's world proves that he is every bit the hero his prime self was. This meta-narrative works so well that I think this premise could have been an interesting way to introduce a new actor, the MCU's new Wolverine having to prove himself to the audience and the multiverse. But the dynamic between Hugh and Ryan has been built up for so many years that a lot of the comedy and emotional impact is dependent on the original actors being there. So I get why this wasn't the place to recast the character, although I hope to see Hugh pass on the role in the future. Comparing Wolverine's character to his last appearance in Logan would be unfair and kinda pointless. Logan is a low-key western, a gritty and emotional story that's given further weight by the 17 years that preceded it. The Deadpool films are first and foremost comedies. There's some drama in there, with a strong romance and emotional themes running throughout, but more so than Guardians of the Galaxy, these are primarily trying to make you laugh. They're gory, sweary action comedies and a self-aware take on the superhero genre. It's apples and oranges. Deadpool and Wolverine isn't trying to be Logan, and it makes that clear from the opening scene. I'd say Logan is probably the better made film with the stronger story, but it's going for a completely different style, and it nails that. In contrast, Deadpool and Wolverine is a comedy set within the MCU that tips its hat to the Marvel films of yesteryear, and it also nails this. You can like both. As for the performance, Hugh still got it. He's endearing, layered, and very human. Even in the funniest scenes, we can tell this Logan is in pain. He's lost everything, and I found the character's turn to alcoholism especially tragic. Wolverine's never been opposed to wisecracks, but Jackman's never had to play the character in a largely comedic context, and he really shines here as the straight man to the loudmouth Deadpool. He even helps to ground the sillier moments. And I appreciate that although the scene is comedic, Logan treats the death of Johnny Storm seriously, clearly furious that Deadpool's big mouth got someone killed. His confrontation with Cassandra, where they talk about Xavier and what he would do if he knew he had a sister, is also incredibly moving. Hugh effortlessly balances the drama and comedy, with the scene in the car being both hilarious and heartbreaking, as he breaks down Wade's pathetic current state, almost like he's berating himself for his own failures. Logan put the character through a lot more emotional and physical stress, but as a secondary send-off to his most famous character, Hugh does a great job. But I still see tweets like this and the pushing of this narrative that Marvel ruined the character's perfect ending, and it's like, did you even watch the film? Our Logan is dead. This is a separate version. But even then, if you're going to blame Ryan Reynolds or Kevin Feige for ruining Logan, you need to understand that this was unambiguously Hugh Jackman's decision. He was serious about retiring from the character back in 2015 when development began on Logan, but was disappointed watching the first Deadpool knowing he wouldn't get to play in that sandbox. Talk of Wolverine joining the MCU was rampant for years, until eventually, after some soul searching, Hugh called Ryan Reynolds in 2022 to confirm he was ready to return as the character. For as much as film Twitter liked to moan that Marvel don't care about good storytelling or emotional weight, Kevin Feige initially encouraged Hugh not to come back, fearing it would detract from Logan's ending. The team double-checked with Hugh, then director Sean Levy and Ryan Reynolds worked together to craft a story that justified bringing in Wolverine without overriding the previous film. Is this all just PR nonsense? Maybe, but I believe Hugh Jackman's passion for the character and his respect for James Mangold's vision. And my final reason why Deadpool and Wolverine doesn't ruin Logan: there is almost no consensus over whether that film was ever meant to be a send-off to that version of Wolverine. Yes, Hugh did originally intend it to be his last, but in terms of the actual character, it's unclear if the version of Logan we see in Logan is our Logan. I've officially said the name Logan so many times, I'm starting to forget my own name.
What's my name?
You see, the X-Men films have a consistently inconsistent timeline. Xavier is in a wheelchair, but now he's not. Nobody seems to age as decades pass like days of the week, and despite the revised timeline at the end of Days of Future Past, the series continued messing with its own continuity. I like to think that Paradox's line about Logan's death sending shivers down the timeline is a subtle nod to these inconsistencies. Maybe when the anchor being dies, the timeline's structural integrity goes with them, messing up people's ages and turning this guy into Peter Dinklage. I'm a Doctor Who fan. Using throwaway lines to resolve plot holes is our bread and butter, and among these timeline issues is the debate of where 2017's Logan fits into all this. The film takes place in 2029, 6 years after the hopeful future of Days of Future Past and 5 years after the relatively normal 2024 in Deadpool and Wolverine. However, it's established in Logan that there hasn't been a mutant born in 25 years, which doesn't fit with the bustling X-Mansion we see in 2023. Maybe this is where the original timeline would have ended up, since events from the first X-Men film are mentioned by Xavier, but that seems unlikely. Ahead of the film's release, Hugh Jackman described Logan as not only different from previous films in terms of timeline and tone, but being a slightly different universe. However, director James Mangold seemingly confirmed the film was set in the same timeline as Future Past, which, as I've already explained, doesn't quite work. The unofficial appendix to the Handbook of the Marvel Universe God, that's a mouthful, designated the world of Mangold's film as Earth 17315, a dark future contrary to the main X-Men films on Earth 10005. For simplicity's sake, Deadpool and Wolverine suggests all the previous films took place on Earth 10005. But it also claims the MCU is Earth 616 when we know it's actually this ridiculously long number.
These timelines are so confusing.
This is getting complicated, but the point still stands. Logan's status as the final appearance of the character was always debatable. In conclusion, I think with a great performance from Hugh Jackman, some hilariously meta storytelling, and embracing the messiness of previous films, Deadpool and Wolverine successfully brings back the character in a fun, entertaining way while still honouring the legacy of Logan. Whether or not this was the perfect return we always hoped for is subjective. It would be impossible to make a version of this movie that satisfies everyone, but based on what I've heard from friends and family, I think Sean Levy has succeeded. With this film and the casting of Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom, there is absolutely the risk of the MCU falling back on the old favourites rather than trying to move forward, which could become a huge issue in future films. But so long as these returning characters and actors are woven into compelling and exciting stories, you won't hear me complaining. And Hugh Jackman's latest turn in the claws manages to have its cake and eat it.
Let's go.